Yeah, I was almost late because the Pearson book representative stopped by and I was like, I have to go. They're really nice, but it's hard to be like, I have to go. I'm sorry.
That sort of thing happens. We're all stretched many different ways.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started, and thank you all for your interest and ability to be present today. Really appreciate it. With us presenting is Abby Helton. Abby, you can introduce yourself more, but she's a lecturer in the College of Business and a real force for course excellence in online learning, and has done a lot of innovative things in her courses and has tried to bring faculty and her colleagues along with her as College of Businesses begin several new endeavors. So I'll let you talk your course up and take it away. Thank you so much.
Sure. So what to say about taxation? I mean, the title alone of this class is just great, right? It makes you really want to take it. No, I'm just kidding. Taxation is a hard topic. And this class is specifically targeted for individual taxation. It is a requirement for accounting majors, and we have some other majors that choose to take it. I personally think it's a great class for anyone to take because there are a few things in life that are inevitable, and those are death and taxes. So, you might as well get on board and kind of learn what's going on. This is the way I like to look at it. So
I'd love for you to talk more. Can you say just a little more about that? What majors, I mean, everybody will have business processes. They'll have to deal with business processes as they go along. Are there students that you see represented that are not part of the standard business curriculum?
A great question. I'm trying to remember the last go. It's mostly accounting majors that take this class, but I've had a few in the other business disciplines that out of curiosity will take this class. I'd love to see more non-business students take it. Again, it's a very real world applicable class. So when I was designing the class, it's really easy to just say, here's a bunch of stuff, like go do it. So instead, I try to incorporate a lot of real world discussion about issues that directly impact students in their everyday lives. So that's when I show the discussion boards, that's exactly what their goal is to do something technical and then do something research based.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry to diverge from that, but that's a very interesting, it's an interesting topic and like you said, applicable to everybody. Are you going to test drive the course a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you have one pulled up with the names?
Let me see.
Otherwise, because I don't have my new section set up yet. It's not quite ready to go.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
What we can do is show your regular course, and then if student names pop up, I can blur them out in an edit.
Okay.
If you want to do
Let
that.
me log in. Yeah, sure. I'd love to show that off. Hey, Teresa. Let me log back into Blackboard. It doesn't like me. And then I will show you my last run of this class, which was the one that I submitted for consideration. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't already have this ready. I didn't know if you were going to have one with like the names already redacted or anything like that. So.
It runs both ways, but so few are going to see it today, and then we'll just show. Okay. We'll blur names out.
And I will say to the attendees, if you have any questions at any point in time, please don't hesitate to jump in. I'm going to share my screen now. All right. So welcome to Accounting 322. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
All right. So already I can tell you're drawn in. Look, we start the whole banner off with a tax form, right? You're just hooked in there. So as I was saying earlier, taxation is a very intimidating topic for a lot of people, but it's something that's inevitable for everybody, unless you're a tax evader, which, as we learn in this class, that's a no-no. Tax evasion is actually what got Al Capone caught, not bootlegging or anything else. But so it's a pretty, I don't know, it's a wild topic if you think about it. Taxation, it's in so much of what we do in our lives and stuff. Now, with an online eCampus class, I try to be mindful that not every student lives in Kentucky. And that's important for my discussion boards. This class only focuses really on federal income taxation because it's just not possible to cover all the states. So I don't know, Chris, do you want me to just show around the class or talk about design, or what would you like me to kind of address here?
Yeah, I mean, you've already uncovered a couple of things that give me, I have questions in my head, and certainly like evading taxes will not get you what you want. But it seems like, talk about this, the student and where they are at in their accounting journey or their intellectual journey, and how, what bridges are you, or what gaps are you bridging as a result of this course?
Great question. I think most accounting majors are probably sophomores or juniors. Maybe some push this off to the end because they just dread it. And then by the end, typically they're like, oh, like this class was actually useful. I love that comment. Oh, this is useful, or like informative, or in some cases it was fun. And that, gosh, that just makes me so happy. If I were teaching this class in a traditional face-to-face setting, we're usually dealing with a lot of traditional students who maybe have had a part job, maybe not, maybe they live with their parents, that's kind of that demographic. For the eCampus version of this class, which we're looking at here, this is an 8-week class, so you have a lot of material to cover in this 8 weeks. These students are traditionally, I think, early to mid-30s, working, they have families, they've probably had a working a job, they've probably filed taxes before. And I commonly hear, I filed my taxes, I had no idea this is what was going on. Like maybe they use an online preparation. So here in this class, the goal is like to show you the foundations of the tax code itself, where those rules come from, who makes the rules. There's a big misconception about who makes tax law, by the way, it is Congress. So if you're mad at someone about the tax code or tax laws, Congress people, they're the ones that have the control over the creation of these laws and rules. Everyone likes to blame somebody else, but that's who does this. And that's something that we pretty much iron out right away. And we talk about misconceptions that exist in the realm of tax, like people saying, well, I'm taxed at such and such tax rate. It's not quite like that. So we kind of try to iron out all these things so that hopefully the students can then be equipped to go out and share that information with other people they know, and to do these things in their real life. So I hope. All right. So course design to me is everything. I just want to say that up front. I am in my early days of college taking classes. Online classes did not exist. Through the years, I've taken various online classes, and I like to take away something from all those classes that I would either do or not do intentionally. And I'll never forget, I took this online marketing class, and this woman was a phenomenal instructor. And the one thing that set her class apart from so many others were her lecture videos. So I'll show those to you in a minute. I put a lot of time and effort into them. And I feel like they're as close to a real class experience as you could probably give somebody in an online setting. So I kind of took that away from her. I just watched what this woman did. And then also, to credit Laura Barthel, watching some things she did in her corporate tax class, I was like, wow, that's a really great idea. So I love learning from colleagues. So, I mean, I worked with my instructional designer, Carla, who really hard on this class, and just so many different influences impacted like whatever I'm going to show you today. So I want to give credit to anybody who's influenced any part of this design. Takes a village, right?
That's for sure. So
every time you log into my class, and I don't know if other classes are like this, mine just drops you off right here at the announcement section. One thing I don't know that everybody knows that they can do is when you create an announcement in Blackboard, you have the option to click a little button that also sends an email to the students to let them know that said email announcement is here. I was meeting with another faculty and they didn't know that. So I just wanted to say, like, it's a really great tool to get the message out there. But if you scroll through my class, you will see I'm a very communicative instructor. I send out all sorts of things, reminders. I start every single week with something that looks like this. Welcome to this week. Hi, class. And I would say hello to them like we're talking. I welcome them to the week. I kind of say, here's what we're going to do. I give them due dates like, hey, don't forget this stuff's going to come up. I think a misconception in online classes is you just set it and forget it in some cases. And that's so not the truth. These are people first and foremost. People just need reminders, I think. Doesn't matter what level they're in, we all get distracted and busy, and to have something that comes to you that says, hey, don't forget. I know I need those. I'm sure Dr. Robles would attest that even faculty need those reminders from time to time. Or if you are a faculty member and thinking, yep, me too, Yep. It certainly helps. And I have a student who's in a face-to-face class that took an online class with me, and he came up and said, gosh, those reminders you sent out meant so much. Like I'd be in the middle of doing something at work and I was like, that's right, I need to prioritize. So just to stress, I'm a very community instructor. That's a tough word. Lots of reminders. I go ahead and tell them what's, here's what's coming up. Or if there's a topic students are struggling with, I might send out a thing that says, hey, I noticed everybody's got questions about X, Y, and Z. So anyhow, all these different things I post throughout the week, but you can see this goes on for a while, for a long while. But first and foremost, a weekly announcement to start the week to get us started off on the right foot. And then I usually sign it with like, let's make this week great as well, under the assumption that I'm getting in their mind saying last week was great. Don't forget it. And I think, Chris, maybe you could speak to this. I think all of the classes have like a start here or click here first or something, right?
Yeah, the course design sort of best practices that we follow, which emanate from what we call Quality Matters. It's an organization that basically gives us a lot of information that's evidence-based on how to create courses. They strongly suggest a starting point in every course.
And again, that was something when I took classes that wasn't there. And this one woman, like to her credit, had this, and I thought that is so smart. So you just go here. And something I just started doing on my own. We all do these welcome videos, and I use Stream and then embed them in the class. And I think the instructional designers worked with me. They're so great. To create a link for accessibility purposes, I have the transcripts turned on, closed captioning, all that stuff. I started doing this, and I cannot recommend this enough. I started creating what I call Blackboard walkthrough video. When you set up a class, you know where everything is. You do. But do the students, even if you have the best design class on the planet, these students are looking at multiple classes, they've got other stuff going on. So it's nice to have a place where they just start off and say, if you're looking for something, here's where it is. So I do this video, I walk them through the way my Blackboard is set up. I do a lot of these videos in Zoom myself, and I'm a box in the corner. So it's me talking to them, but it's just saying, hey, if you need this, this is where you find it. And then a link to a few different things. As a first day drop assignment, which we have to be very cognizant of, especially in these online classes, I have two things they have to do. One is an intro discussion post with dates clearly posted here. And they do this orientation to the class, which is really just to get them familiar with the third-party platform I use, which is Cengage for this class. So they have to complete these. They get reminders about that. It's in the syllabus, etc. But that way I know who is actively participating for that purpose. I had the good fortune of having a facilitator in this class. I also want to mention, which is important as we go through this. That's one thing, again, about eCampus classes that's so great is once you hit that threshold and you get some help to kind of do these things. So that's all on start here. I have a little Meet Your Instructor section. Again, I think others have that. So I asked my facilitator to add a little bio because we are people and we need to remind the students we're like going to teach you stuff, but we're people. Like, this is us. I have interests. I have things I like to research and read about. Here's my educational background. And then my facilitator put her information up there too.
And that the university didn't just pull random people off the street to teach these courses.
That's
you
exactly
right.
Right.
Made that point in a prior meeting, Abby. And it's very true. Like,
yes.
and the faculty of the department select those individuals in almost every case. And they're real people that are real professionals and really mainly do it to help because they enjoy it and want to help students.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I should, for the facilitator purposes, these are folks that are academically qualified and usually professionally qualified. In the case of accounting, they might have a CPA license, a CMA certification, and typically a bachelor's or master's and something along those lines. So very qualified to help. But yeah, I like the students to know, like, hey, look, here's my degree I hold that is relevant to what we're doing. And I have a CPA, because to them that usually they understand what that means at this point. And then I have a little syllabus section. And then here's something else I started doing. Again, I think I just decided this would be helpful since you do it in a live class, is I do a syllabus walkthrough video. So again, we all say it's in the syllabus and it would be great if all of the students read it. some don't, some do. And so I do a walkthrough video for my syllabus where I just walk through stuff like I would if we were in class together. So I can just highlight things that I think are important, clarify things that in writing make sense, but in practice need to be emphasized. One thing I find there's a lot of confusion about is what an asynchronous class actually means. So I spent some time even in this video discussing what asynchronous means. No live class meetings, you're driving your educational experience. I'm facilitating and teaching you, but like you have to have good time management skills and things of that nature. That's important. And it's confusing for some of the students at first. They think we're gonna have these meeting times and you don't. I had a student once after watching this video that emailed me and said, wow, the fact that you took the time to do this makes me think like you really care about your students a lot. Like this is what this video communicated to them and it took me just maybe 10 minutes. So maybe a little longer, I think. But I think someone said something in the chat. Oh, sure. If you all want to hear part of it, Chris, can I play it? Okay. Let's see if you can hear it.
Might need to turn it up, Abby, and I'm not sure if it's going to use system video in this particular case. Yeah, turn it all the way. It's on low.
It won't let me adjust the volume. I turned it up on my side, but it won't let me.
I don't know. I probably won't be able to.
Okay. Marcy, if you're really interested, I can send it to you if you want. I can do this little. I wonder if we watched it in stream, if it would show. I don't know.
You can try it.
Okay, I'll try real quick. Can you hear it?
Yeah. Huh.
Did you hear it?
No.
It might have something to do with Zoom's sound sharing settings.
It could.
Okay. So basically it's just me talking to them like, hey, and because like I said, it's hard sometimes when you don't see your instructor every day for them to remember like, this is a real person talking to you. And that I want them to have the same experience I would give to these students on class where I can control that because it's not going to be the same, but we do what we can. I also include in here the drop dates and a link to that so they have the most up-to-date thing. And then I include a discussion board rubric. I only have 3 discussion. No, I'm sorry. This class has them every week. I was seeing my other class. So my discussion boards are a big part of their grade. And so I like them to know how the points are structured. And that makes grading them a lot easier too. Okay, so I also at some point created an exam review section. I've run into instructors before, to each their own, who don't like doing things like this. They feel like it kind of gives too much away. I don't agree with that. I think I need to give these students every advantage I can. I'm not giving them any answers, right? This review, if they really want to learn it, they're going to put the time into it and then check their work, right? And because this is typically for accounting majors that have specific objectives and goals in mind, most of them want to do this stuff, or they try to make time to do it. But on to the big parts. Here is where I spend a lot of time in this class design is this weekly lessons section. So each module is housed here. So they come here and each module has, at the end of the week, here are all the learning objectives you should have checked off from this class. And it kind of gives a little overview of what's there. My instructional designer helped me pick little icons and stuff that we thought would be appropriate and thematically one color, which visually I think looks good. So when they come in the module, every module is set up exactly the same. They get a little task list. And then I'll show you something I acquired from the PD2 class. Let me download this checklist and do a new share so I can show you. I think, sorry, me and Zoom, new share. Let me see. Oh, good. Okay, let's switch over to this. All right, can everyone see my Word document? Okay, so again, a big fan of reminders. I'm also, I don't know, I'm a checklist person. I like checking stuff off physically, something gratifying about doing that. I picked this idea up from PD2. It was just like something randomly mentioned for half a second somewhere. And I thought that's pretty cool. So every week I make my students a checklist. And really, if you do this right, you just have to do it one time. And you can continue to use it over and over again. But it lists every single thing that they should be doing or accomplishing throughout that week. So they have some initial items, and then they have in this module, here's everything you need to do. It's even like log into Blackboard and check announcements. Go to the weekly lesson section, find the module. If they've done that, they can already check 2 things off the list. And because my classes have a lot of individual things due, I have them all listed out here. So it helps them keep track of all the things they need to do. And then again, they get that gratification of checking it off when it's done. So that's there. So I make one of those for every single week. So that's always out there. Let me go back to my class. Okay. All right, so that's there, each module fresh checklist. And then each module has a discussion board. I want to show this to you. So I, again, took an online class where they made you post your responses first. And at first I thought, how dare you? What? But what I took away from that is, wow, how different everybody's responses are to these similar questions. So I have what I call post first discussion boards. So the students are required to answer 2 questions every week. And the reason I do this at the midway point is it's ensured they already read the chapter halfway through the week. Because to answer the first question, you had to have read the chapter. So it helps me to get them kickstarted on the reading. But once they collect their answers, they then post, and then they can see what all of their other classmates said. And it's so fun to watch in that discussion post, especially on these technical ones where they're like, oh, you did that, me too. Or, oh, I didn't do it that way, but oh, I see where what you did was right. And, they get to critique or add feedback to their classmates. So every week they get something technical, like this one says, there are some people, do they get to claim Jerry as a qualifying child, which was a topic from their chapter. And then I asked them to do something more opinion-based that has to be supported by research. So I explained the US operates on a progressive tax system because they should have kind of gotten an introduction to what that is. They have to tell us what that means. Do they think it's the best system for our tax system? And if they don't think so, what alternative would they suggest? So they actually have to really get in there and dig and think about. So that's the critical thinking component. What it is that the tax goal is, what are the goals of the tax system? How do we accomplish that? And what's the best way to do that? So we're answering all that with 1 or 2 questions. The response I've gotten to these discussion boards, my favorite thing maybe I've ever seen in an evaluation is, normally I hate discussion boards, but in this class, gosh, I really learned a lot. I looked forward to doing them. And I think that's just so cool.
And
so that made me.
Tell me why you think, I know why it is, I think. Tell me why you think that students enjoy those discussion boards.
Well, I think it's being asked to share an opinion about something that's not just, do you like this? I have a different class where I just say, what are your thoughts on this so far? And it's a really kind of surface level question because that's appropriate for that level. But at this place, these students get to go out and research something that they can be proud to answer. Like, here are my thoughts. And I think also because they can't see the other students' responses, they get a lot of pride when there's like, everybody's getting the same answer as them and they feel really good about themselves. That's kind of what I think. It's just not, they said they feel like it's not just busy work. Like they feel like they're walking away with something that's really tangible and useful for them. What do you think?
Well, yes, you're asking for discourse ultimately. And as we talk about community of inquiry, discourse is what happens when we have that cognitive presence or what's worth knowing in the class with the organic and original exchange of ideas and communication between peers. So you're asking for discourse. You're asking them to apply knowledge that they've presumably already gained, and then you're kind of teasing them. If you want to see your peers' responses, you got to come up with yours first. So to me, that's a really great combination. But see, you're making some good choices based on what you know about the students, what you know about the content. This may not work for your, for a 100-level course, or it may not work for a super advanced course where we're constantly just talking about, we're having like a revolving discussion. So the right strategy at the right time can yield good results. That's what I think.
Thanks. I agree. Like I said, in another class that I have 3 discussion boards for the entire term because it's otherwise very distracting for them. They don't need it. I like them to check in and they get to share test taking strategies. Like I ask them their study techniques. And I love to watch in that class, for example, students say, ooh, I've never tried that. So it's more helpful for each other in that way. But in this class, you're right. I like for them to I want them to have an actual discussion because taxes are such an integral part of our lives, whether we like it or not. It's very important to understand what's going on, how it applies to you, how does it apply to everybody else? Is it the best way? Are there better ways to do things? One of my favorite discussion boards was I gave them a list of wild deductions people have taken, like someone tried to deduct, pet health costs or something, just wild things. And I had them talk about which one they couldn't believe someone tried to do. And so I really like that. Or in one week, I had them talk about how in our state in Kentucky, this is one of the only times I address our state specifically, we have a budget shortfall like we do every year. And how would they fix it? Would you create a new tax? What would you tax? So they really have to think about, well, I don't know what's fair to everybody. So again, these are really good, I think, critical thinking exercises, which is something that I think all educators are always striving to get as much of that in there as possible, as much as we can. All right. So now on to the heart of the actual, what they have to do. Every week, it's laid out exactly the same. It corresponds with that checklist they saw. I give them a direct link to the actual chapter. I've used these platforms enough to know you click the link and then you have to find the table of contents and that's fine, but this just, here you go. I use the PowerPoints a lot with my lectures because as I tell the students, without them, I get really excited to talk about all of this stuff. So I need them to keep me on track. So in these lecture videos, I do an overview of what is to come in the chapter. I talk about each learning objective specifically and at the very end, so you can see there's a lot of these videos, right? This is just one chapter. There's 10, and then I do an overview and a summary. So I say, here's what we're going to do. We go do that. And then I give them a summary at the end that says, here's all the stuff we did. Like, it also reminds them, like, you've gone through a lot of stuff at this point. Like, you're amazing. You're crushing it. And as silly as this sounds, I accidentally ended my video once with happy taxing. I have no clue why, but then I started doing it intentionally. And in my evaluations, my students said, I thought it was so silly the first time I heard it, but then by the end, I looked forward to hearing that because it knew I was, I'd reached the end of learning that topic. So.
And if there's CPAs who do tax and they do it well, they're going to be happy to make that money too, right?
That's right. Well, I figured tax is a dry kind of, it gets this kind of reaction. So if I can at the end tie on like happy taxing, or something to remind them, like, it doesn't have to be that bad. Like, we can make it fun. My lecture videos, I should mention, if I could show you one where you could hear it, that would be great. I don't mind sharing these with anybody who wants to see them. They're very much like.
No, we can make space like right now for me to paste a few minutes of one in if you want to later identify the clip that you want me to feature. So we'll,
sure.
At this point, we'll cut to one of Abby's tax videos.
All right.
Okay, we're back.
Cool, then. And we're back. Yes. So as you can see in my lecture video, it is, for lack of a better way to describe myself, it's just ridiculous. You feel so silly when you're sitting there making them, but it really helps the students feel like they know you. Like, this is, I like to think, pretty much the same version of myself here that you get in a classroom. And I think that is sometimes lost. I've, again, taken some classes where an instructor will make a 45-minute long video and they're really monotone the whole time. And it's really hard to stay engaged. So my videos are, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, 7 sometimes. But I always remind the students throughout, hey, if you need a break, pause, come back. You can do that, because that happens, especially with the number of videos that I'm asking them to watch here. So also, I should mention in later chapters where there are more formulaic driven concepts, like calculating an IRA contribution. I'm sure all of you were like, I was wondering when you were going to address that, Abby, IRA contributions. There's a formula to that. And so I'll say, let's do a separate walkthrough video. So I'll do a couple of examples where I show them how specifically to do it instead of relying on like just talking about it doing the trick. So then if I go back out to my materials folder, all the things I want them to do are in the order in which they need to be done. So they do this like adaptive study plan, and I don't know if you all have used those before. They're cool. They let you check in and see how confident you feel about a topic. Then they have a homework and then a quiz. But, and this part's really fun, they get to do a tax form at the end of every chapter. And so instead of waiting until the end and giving them some huge comprehensive problem, which is what a lot of individual taxation classes tend to do, I say, no, we're going to check in and do a short one every week so that you're taking what we learned in that chapter and you're doing it every week. So do. And honestly, that's basically, it's a lot of the same thing every week. There's a lot in each week, but the format is very, very much the same. I also learned recently, a lot of these textbooks will have pre-recorded lectures, but I've never been a fan of using those because I feel like the students, they come here and I'm teaching them. And so I feel like they might want to like listen to me. I mean, I hope so. And I've heard recently a textbook company had done a study and they found overwhelmingly from the students, they like videos, but only when it's their actual instructor. So I thought, okay, good. I'm not wasting my time on this.
There's also a multimedia principle that suggests that natural, like if it's a studio voice and it's rather, it can be too polished, I guess, is what I'm suggesting. So yeah, the instructor is the best one to present the content in that way.
And I should also say, I don't have a script for my lecture videos. If I scripted it out, it would sound very sterile and sanitized. And that's just not how I am as a person or when I teach. And so I feel like I need to just kind of talk about the stuff as I would again if I were teaching in person. I don't have a script when I go to teach a live class, so I don't have one here either. So I guess that's, I mean, for lack of a better way to say it, that's kind of it. I do include a link to the Cengage stuff if they want to just jump to their dashboard or the ebook or something. And then, I don't know that everybody adds this. Can I show my grade book real quick? Not the actual grade book, but the way it looks to the students. Okay.
Absolutely.
Something simple I started doing that I never ever get any questions about what is my grade. Oh, Teresa said she doesn't use the script either. Yeah, just can't do it.
As long as we can get the script, we're good.
Yes, and that's why if you enable on stream the captioning, it does the transcript for you. And you do have to go through and make changes, because as much as I like to think I don't have an accent, I'm sure that's not true. And stream sometimes doesn't always discern the pronunciation of certain things like I think it should. So I never get questions about what is my grade, because in my grade book, I group everything together by the kind of item it is, because on the syllabus, that's how it's presented. It says for this particular category, you get this many points. So they can say, okay, total adaptive study plan, total homework, total quiz, right? They can scroll through and see all these, but I have them all totaled together in a total grade. So they see a percentage. And then again, to take any guesswork out, I go ahead and set up an extra column that equals this one, but it presents as a letter grade. And that way the student, I mean, again, it's in the syllabus, but are they looking at that? I don't know. So I initially did this because I kept thinking, why am I continuing to have to answer this question about what is my grade? It's right there. So I added this percentage and then the letter grade, and I don't get those emails anymore. So it's just one less thing I have to answer in an email. The students are empowered to go here and check on their own, and they know at all times where their grade stands. So I recommend anybody do that if they can. Very helpful. And something else I was thinking, even for me, when I have those columns, I can quickly go through and assess, oh, is someone struggling? Did somebody, like, without having to think about the numbers, that person had a B last week and they have a C all of a sudden, what happened? So it's going to provoke me, prompt me to go look and investigate a little bit more, which when you have a facilitator is a lot easier to make time for than when you don't. I think that's it. Does anybody have questions?
I've got a couple and you could tell me, oh, go ahead, Justin.
Hey, Abby, question about working with a facilitator. You mentioned successfully doing that after a certain threshold. Can you talk a little bit about what makes the threshold for you of being most effective with a facilitator and how you work with that facilitator to be effective?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the thresholds are set out by someone like administration, right? And then eCampus disseminates that information. But I believe at the undergrad level, it's 30 plus one. So at 31 students, you get a facilitator, and then at 61, you get a second, and at 91, you get a third and fourth. So depending on your enrollment, now it's the last business day before the start of class, all these new dates. So for this class, I think last year the threshold was different, and I had like 32. So last year I only got one facility, or no, wait. No, it was just shy of getting 2, and I was like, "Ah, rats," right? I think last year it would have had to have 70, and I might have had 60, so I was very close. This year I would have gotten 2. Because I only had 1 and we had a large group, I did something called the modified method, which is where it's kind of like all hands on deck. Let's fairly divvy up some of the work, and we don't necessarily have assigned groups of students. I didn't feel like it was fair in this case to say, hey, facilitator, you have to grade 60 discussion boards every week and 60 exams 4 times. That just felt like a lot. So she would do a preliminary grade of the exams, and I would go through and compare and make sure that the grading was consistent, because I should have also mentioned it would be easy for me in an online class to say, here's a multiple choice test. And in some classes that's appropriate. But in my exams, let me see if I can show you one real quick. It's very application based. Let me just go pretend to take one real quick. Just trying to remember where that happened. My exams will have them do multiple choice. Here it is. Multiple choice and problems. So you can imagine in this case with 60 students, the multiple choice are graded, but then we come down here to the end and it's like, calculate these amounts, calculate this amount, tell me the tax treatment of these 2 things. So there's a lot of like individually answered questions. It can be easy, even with the best rubric and the smartest people in the room. Consistency can be challenging. So I said, how about this? And we just fairly came up with a plan to where I would have the final say in the way the grades go. And I think if you were working with multiple facilitators, that might still be a good thing to do. I mean, the idea with facilitators is you're supposed to trust that they can run your classes as well as you can. And most of the time that's true. But for issues like this, where it can be a little subjective, I like to have one person kind of come in at the end and say, all is fair and consistent. If you use the full method of facilitation, you essentially assign groups of students to those facilitators, and they take care of all the items for that group of students. So instead of dividing one test up amongst people, this facilitator takes all the tests from that student. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that super well. Hope so.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I had another question, and it wasn't about facilitation. It was more about discussion boards. Can you talk about your experience facilitating or getting robust discussion out of students in an asynchronous fashion? So I'm finding a big range of quality in the responses, and spend a lot of time on the rubric, trying to design the rubric and the questions to bring out thoughtful responses from the student. But yet, despite my best efforts in design, I'm still seeing very thoughtful responses and also very, lazy responses. Sometimes barely coherent responses. And aside from just grading them poorly, have you been able to bring out the best in students? And are there any strategies from design or anything that you employed to think that you got better than maybe average?
Yeah. And so I think in this class, feedback's really important. I've had students before that have said some things in these discussion boards where I'm like, No, in a sense of like their remarks are really unkind in a lot of ways. And I'm like, hey, listen, let's have a quick talk about this. And then, they evolve or they'll say, thanks for that feedback because they weren't aware of whatever. Let me see if I can go, because Chris, you said you could blur out a name if we needed to. Okay.
We sure can.
Oh, we broke, I forgot, just to not overwhelm the students. This is another suggestion I have for anybody. Even if you're not going to have facilitators, I think it's good to break the students into groups so that when they go to do a discussion board, they're not being hit with 60 or whatever discussion post. They're just seeing a small group of 10 people, and then they can kind of build a rapport with those particular people. So if I go to this group, so here was their first discussion post. Everybody participated, I think. Let me go see if I can look at someone's. So that one wasn't, I mean, it's just like you. I mean, some are going to be really detailed. Like, look at this student. This was a question about misclassifying employees as contractors, because that's a real hot button issue, even in California. So this is why this class honestly does take a lot of forethought and effort, because tax laws always change. It's subjective. There's a lot going on. So you can see this student was more than happy to share their experience with this topic, right? And then up here, they shared all the ways they devised this particular answer. And then the students kind of contribute below. And I have like requirements for the kind of post or replies they have to give to their classmates as well. So I think a lot of it is just in the way you present the questions that you're asking. I guess if it's a really good question, Justin. I'm a lot more successful in accomplishing this in this class than I am in a lower level class too. These are students, in this case, this is their major, or they want to be taking this subject. So they're generally more engaged in this topic than they would be otherwise.
And that might be the piece I'm missing here, because I'm teaching a more generalized class. One thing that I thought, a strategy I was considering employing, is taking a personal approach in the discussion board and giving more personal feedback. I haven't seen that employed a lot, where the instructor will really dig into the discussion board and respond to students and poke for more information. But that's something that I was considering. Have you felt the need to do that anywhere in any of your other classes, or have you had an experience of instructors getting more personal in their discussion boards and what the results have been?
Let me just hide the names. Can you still see them? Are they off screen now? Okay.
They're off screen now.
Okay. I was going to go, Justin, just because you asked, and show you, and Chris, I know you'll blur out the names, and just show you maybe some of the feedback I gave to a student on a discussion board, if that would help. Let's see. So, I mean, what I say isn't totally long. Some are much longer, but I'm like, great post. You did a really good job on the first part. And I tell them what they did well, so that they don't think I'm just sitting here being like, yeah, I read it. And then part 2 looked good. I agree. And then I always make it a point to indicate something from their post that I actually hit on, which again, can be pretty time consuming, I know, to go through and do that. But then I just try to continue to build on just any kind of feedback, because I think one thing students think is you're not even looking at what I'm doing. So by giving feedback that looks like this, they know you did read their stuff. And I think they also feel like they're going to be judged a little bit more seriously if they know you're actually reading it. So I think that elicits better responses as well.
The literature's all over the place about how involved an instructor should be in like the discussion boards as the students post. The original thought was that less is more. I think it depends on your personality and kind of knowing your students over time. I'm less is more after about week 3, an 8-week course.
But you can also do feedback banks, right? Which is something that's covered in PD. I was doing this before I knew it had a name, where I will have a skeleton response, and I'll just go through and plug something that's like subjective to that thing. Like on the next person's, I might say, part 2 look good, but I would encourage you to something, right? Like something specific to that. So you're not having to recreate the wheel, but you're still giving personalized feedback.
Yeah.
So
the feedback's essential.
I'll be honest, in the actual discussion post, because the students in this class have such good discussions, I tend not to jump in. I also don't want to ruin it for them because this is their chance to explore this topic on their own. And I don't want to jump in and be like, yes or no, and then kind of impede whatever progress they're making there. So again, depending on the class, I may or not be involved in the actual discussion post, but I'll say in my announcement, I loved reading your discussions, and I'll kind of say like, something that I saw overall that they did, or I'll say one of your classmates said they found this was interesting. So again, it just kind of reinforces like, I'm really involved. I really do read what you do. I take it very seriously. And then I think because I take it seriously, I think they take it more seriously kind of as a result.
Oh, that's good to hear and good to see the way that you handle feedback on discussion boards. I appreciate that.
Sure. Chris, you said you had a question.
Well, my question is, how do you deal with this revolving tax code issue in this course without making yourself insane?
I don't know.
Because
You know,
it seems
this
like
is-
a lot of, we have some classes that, like nursing, for example, if you did
Mhm.
nursing 5 years, the way you did it 5 years ago, they tell me you might be, committing malpractice. So I imagine with tax code, it's the same.
It's before 2018, I would have said, well, it's mostly the same every year. And then that Tax Cuts and Jobs Act just came through and basically wiped the board clean and changed everything. But the approach to teaching the class never changes, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I have found a tried and true measure of show, do, repeat in accounting, and then putting pencil to paper. So I do encourage the students all the time, look, it's easy to type your notes. You need to put a pencil to paper. Like you really want to learn this, you got to do that. So there's a lot of studies that back that up as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, taxes really, it's a tough one to keep updated, even as I teach, by the time the book comes out, some of it's already out to date. So I do my best to stay on top of releases from the IRS, or if I hear that some tax stuff is kind of in discussion, I'll make it a point to mention it to the students, or I'll say, hey, when this book came out, like, this is the way, just know moving forward, this is the change you can expect. And they're usually pretty receptive to that.
Does this course teach an approach to keeping up with that, or is that just something they learn when they're out in the world?
I mean, through the research-based discussion post questions, I think I encourage them to go explore for information, because they have to give me a source typically where they find this stuff. It's their opinion, but it's a research supported opinion, right?
Sure.
So if I looked on the IRS site and it says XYZ, here's the current rule, but I think maybe this could change, or we could do this instead.
Thank you for that. Because I think that's a challenge in certain disciplines where, you just have to, you get on board and then you just stay on board. But
Yes.
that's a challenge to teach.
It is, but I always tell the students, I get really excited when I teach in general, but I really like teaching tax, so I get pumped. Or I'll go off on little, not horrible tangents, but I'll be like, this is one of my pain points, as far as calculating or keeping, because it always changes. It is hard to keep up with, but in a way that's also nice because it reminds them it's not a static thing. Taxes seem very static. They have like mostly the same due date every year, the same forms, but so much that goes into that changes. So it's a nice opportunity to remind them of that as well.
That's great. And it helps to have, so, we talk a lot about the community of inquiry, which you learned in maybe before, but definitely in PD2, we cover it. And that teaching presence that you're showing is so strong and so individual to you. Like I get a specific sense about how your classes run just by talking with you and seeing how you've laid everything out with the intent to let that student go about the business of learning as streamlined and as straightforward as possible. So I really appreciate that about you, and lots of faculty do something similar, but you've got your own unique sort of take on it, which is, I think, really, that's why I'm glad to have you speak today. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I have been a student, I've been an instructor, we all have. And I mean, I took a class that's just a few years ago somewhere, which is where I met that marketing teacher. And I thought, the class is so great. Like, it was so good. I loved it. And so I borrowed some things, just her approach to certain things that I don't know, once you see someone do something well, I want to try to emulate that if I can. But
sure.
I do think overall, I mean, the first time I taught this class online, it was different. That's what happens. It's not a static process. You evolve. And even after running this last year, there's some things not major things, little things I'll do maybe a little differently this time. But I make all those lecture videos, and the first time you make them, you're like, anybody watching these? And then you have the students email you, put in your evaluation, whatever, that made all the difference to them. And it's the reason they learned something. And then it's like, okay, even though I couldn't feel that while it was happening, like it did actually make some kind of impact. So I just feel like I need to put my face out there as much as possible to remind them, this is not like a Cengage teaches you stuff. Like I will teach you. Because having that connection with them is important since we don't meet them in person.
Anybody can dump a canned course content series of materials into a learning management system. Like anybody can do that or have somebody do it. But it's that personality, it's the fact that they know somebody is, going on the journey with them that makes the real difference, I think.
Yeah, and something else, I mean, for anyone that uses facilitators, I sent out an email at the beginning that has my expectations laid out very clearly. I try not again, that's a learning process of, oh, I should have said that before. Oh, I didn't think to mention that. So now I keep kind of a list of things I tell facilitators ahead of time, if I'm lucky enough to have one, but that helps as well. But I'll send a list of facilitators and say, here's students I'm concerned about. If they're in your groups, can we please go ahead and start reaching out to them? So we try to triage this. And I think the DFW rate for this class, if I remember correctly, was very low. It's because we stay on top of everybody. And again, I can't stress this enough. It feels like, I know you shouldn't have. Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to? Because you can, right? Like, because you don't have to go and deliver a live lecture every day. You have time you can manage your time in other ways, or you can use facilitators to help you do those things. And so I have no problem making checklists, sending reminders, reaching out to students individually, because I want them to stay in this class. And above all else, I want them to be successful, whatever that means to them, because success is not a one defined word. For some people, it's just getting through it. For some people, it's I got to have an A or whatever, whatever their objectives are. Like I want to try to help them to meet those.
And if this was a sticking point and one email that you sent or a phone call maybe that somebody made, like an online coordinator, like if that saves a student, to me, that it's well worth taking that extra 5 minutes or whatever.
I agree. I mean, I've had some students and you email them and they just can't stay in your class, but they may not have realized they have to unenroll themselves. So you save them the hassle of getting an FN or having to pay a fee or something, right? Your interjection makes a difference to somebody else.
Yep.
So again, my students generally in my evaluations, which I should say up front, those have their place and their value, but they're not the end all be all of assessment. I feel like I could show you my class and it speaks for itself. You can assess as you please. But for the most part, they often tell me that they feel very connected to me and they feel like I see this a lot. She really cares. And I think it's just because I communicate. I mean, I do generally care, but I think, do I care more than anyone else? Probably not. But I think all the faculty here care a great deal about their students. But, I just communicate so frequently and I'm very transparent. So I think that really goes a long way when you're teaching these asynchronous online classes.
Absolutely. I used to couch all these things, these things that you're doing, teaching presence, social presence, cognitive presence, bound by this course design. When I talk about the course design, I used to say, we're reducing the number of emails you're going to get from your students. And that's kind of that's not the right attitude. What I mean to say typically is we're reducing frustration and increasing clarity and the load that students will feel that's sort of extraneous to the stuff they really need to get busy with. And so that will generate fewer emails. But I used to talk about that kind of flippant, but what it really amounts to is a good student experience where everything's streamlined and very obvious, and the faculty, including facilitators, are ready to help. And so, you've done that in spades, which is why this was a winning course.
Thank you. I want to show you when everything So you all can understand why I'm so glad I don't have to do live lectures. I want you to see how many virtual office posts I had during this class, 257. And now a lot of those are for me answering questions, but this is where the students come and ask homework questions. And so, like I said, I am very engaged in my classes. Yeah, there's a 24 to 48 hour response time, but with this demographic in mind, it's really hard, I think personally, as much as I would love to let it take that long. They're working on the weekends. This is the only time they have it. Their baby is taking a nap, something. So I try to be really cognizant that although I would love to not pay attention to this on the weekends, that's kind of the nature of this asynchronous online beast. But we stayed very busy in that virtual office last year.
It shows. Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. I've got 23. Go ahead.
I would say it's just a lot. It was a lot. Felt like a lot too. Anybody else have questions? Teresa, do you have any questions? Or Dr. Robles? Everybody's just hanging. Put him on the spot like in class. There's Teresa.
Yeah, my daughter's standing over my shoulder going, she was like, they can't see you and they can't hear you. And I was like, no. So then she came over here so she could watch. The main thing I would like that I'm taking away is like your checklist. So I would like to make a checklist. I've actually had students ask me for that. And, we all know I have free time running rampant over here. But if I would like to see a copy of your checklist because you had on there to check Blackboard announcements. I would completely forget to put that on there. So I think you have some things on the checklist that I would forget that I would like to have available so that I know, so that I don't forget it.
You got it. Yours.
And I still
you may have it.
Oh, me too. Yeah, and you're still twisted for liking this whole tax and accounting thing as much as you do.
I love it. Someone has to, okay, or else we're all doomed.
that is true. I told you I set myself up, so it's my own fault.
It's your fault, Teresa.
You've highlighted several things, even as an instructional designer or former who's been in this world a long time and knew these things. But it like, for example, the checklist was the first thing. The setting up the discussion board so that students had to post first. That's a really great strategy. Your announcement structure, like you have a definitive announcement structure. You have a definitive grade center structure so that students can not only see categories of grades, but also their final grade, also their current grade, also their current grade expressed as a letter grade, which is excellent. That your discussion board posts are multifaceted depending on your audience. That you offer short homework instead of giving them a big long tax form. You're looking at specific problems within a tax form. Those are just a few of the things I pulled out that are super applicable to a lot of different people, a lot of different scenarios. So I really appreciate you. I mean, and you talked about a lot more, but those are some quick things people can implement, right away that can make a big difference.
Thanks. I always ask myself, if I were a student, like, what am I concerned with? Let's be honest, it's usually the grades. So what can you do on the upfront side to just alleviate the anxiety they may be having about that or whatever? Because I don't know. I heard this phrase and I love to share whenever I can. It's the older we get, the better we were, right? When we think about
right.
When I was a student, no, when you were a student, you might have been just like, all these things that you say drive you crazy. Like you probably did those things too. So I just think, what would help me kind of feel better, more in control of my environment? And so some of those things I've implemented are just really a result of that question to myself.
Some people talk about like, well, students shouldn't be worried about their grade. Like I look at it from a different point. Maybe the student didn't like the grade they got last time, and seeing that will motivate them to put a little more effort in next time. I mean, there are all kinds of interactions that can happen as a result of having that little data point ready for them, so I think it's good.
It is good. It also helps them, if you're not where you want to be grade wise, what can you do to fix that or what have you? But then some of them have scholarships they have to be concerned about, or maybe in some cases an employer will only reimburse you if you get a certain grade. I've seen that before. So like they need that information They do. So I like for them to have it. And if they do something with it, great. If not, that's okay too. But at least it's there if they need it.
Yep. Anything else for the good of the order? Abby, thank you so much. Justin said,
Yeah,
impressive
thank
setup.
you.
Thanks for showing us, speaking with us. Justin, if you want to follow up with any of your discussion board questions, I can throw a lot of resources at you and ideas, and I'm sure Abby be more than willing to answer a question or two
Sure.
at some point as well.
Well, it says, I know that 2 people
Thanks,
are in
really
my
appreciate
college,
that.
but I have zero problem working with anybody in any college. We're all like in the same boat together, this boat of academia, trying to get these students educated. I don't mind sharing resources with anybody who wants them. So let me know.
Thank you so much. This is a really great, a
Thanks.
great talk, Abby. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming and listening and stuff. This is fun. And I got to bore some of you with taxes, haha, and you stuck around for it. So
No, it was
You know.
great. It was great. Thank you.
Cool.